Welcome, my dearest friends, to Pillow Tales. I am your companion for the evening, Clara Beaumont, and I invite you now to settle back, find the softest place upon your pillow, and allow the cool, damp, intricate elegance of a long-ago world to carry your thoughts into a profound, restful sleep. Chapter 1. Setup. Tonight, we journey deep beneath the foundations of Ashworth Hall, a majestic country house in the mid-1930s, to a sanctuary where silence is heavy and shadows lie deep. The ancient wine cellar. I want you to feel the change in the air now as we descend into this chamber of stone and shadow. The scent is utterly unique, a rich, earthy mixture of damp flagstones, cool moss, and the deep, silent aroma of aged oak barrels that line the walls, holding a century of history in their dark wood. The air itself is thick, constant, and utterly devoid of the usual sounds of the house, a perfect vacuum where only whispers dare to travel. In this hushed geometry of wine racks, we find the great detective, Hercule Poirot, who has been invited to offer a precise, professional eye on Lord Ashworth's legendary collection. Poirot, ever the admirer of order, is engaged in a quiet, internal monologue, musing on the perfect symmetry of the stacked bottles, each one uniform, each one a testament to time and patience. He reflects that the label is the very soul of the wine, its identity, its lineage, its specific memory of the year it was born. This quiet admiration is brutally interrupted by the discovery of a profound violation. A legendary, irreplaceable bottle of Château Valois, 1914. Famous for being the last remaining bottle outside of French vaults, stands perfectly in its rack, but its unique signed label has been meticulously, cleanly removed. The bottle is whole, the wine is intact, but its identity is utterly, devastatingly gone. The suspects are immediately present in the periphery of this subterranean chamber. Lord Ashworth, the host, is a man whose customary arrogance has been replaced by a visible, pitiful trembling. He points a shaking finger at the defiled bottle, his breath catching in his throat. Lady Evelyn Ashworth, his wife, stands elegantly distant, yet her eyes flicker with a cold, barely disguised boredom, dismissing the crime with a soft, audible yawn, suggesting she views wine and its passions as merely a man's foolish hobby. Nearby is Mr. Simon Keene, the precise sommelier, whose pallor is extreme. His devotion to this cellar is fanatical, and his face is a mask of personal, agonizing betrayal. Finally, we observe Miss Iris Vance, a young, nervous guest specializing in the preservation and restoration of ancient documents and papers. Her presence is coincidental, yet her profession which requires the controlled removal and handling of delicate paper, makes her immediately and acutely interesting to Monsieur Poirot. The stage is set deep in the cool, profound silence of the stone cellar, where the crime is not against a person, but against the memory held in a small piece of paper. Chapter 2. The crime scenario. The narrative now dwells upon the sheer physical impossibility of the access, allowing the listener to visualize the extreme security of the cellar. This chamber of treasures is a fortress. Access is controlled by a single, heavy, iron-bound oak door that requires two separate locking mechanisms. First, a standard brass key lock, and second, a specific, modern, mechanical digital code. The thick stone walls ensure the room is completely soundproofed. No vibration, no code entry click could possibly carry to the manor above. Furthermore, the Valois 1914 was not merely in the cellar, but within a smaller, inner glass-fronted, locked cabinet inside the main room. Crucially, Poirot observes that this inner cabinet lock is also untouched, meaning the thief was already inside the main cellar when the crime was committed. We return to the timeline, and this segment is stretched and detailed to the extreme, focusing on the small window of opportunity. Lord Ashworth performed his final obsessive check of the Valois bottle, confirming its perfection at precisely 9 p.m. Mr. Keene, the sommelier, performed the official nightly lockdown of the outer oak door at 10:30 p.m., engaging both the key and the code. Therefore, the crime occurred either in that short 90-minute window or, and this is the terrifying thought for Poirot, sometime after the sommelier locked up, suggesting a phantom entry and exit. The list of interested parties expands subtly with the introduction of our fifth figure, Captain George Hollis, a notorious bitter wine collector who had been a guest but was publicly and harshly insulted by Lord Ashworth earlier that day for his unrefined taste. Captain Hollis was asked to leave the manor, but was seen by a groundskeeper lingering near the perimeter walls late that evening, introducing the possibility of external revenge or theft driven by resentment. The scene is locked down. The bottles are silent, and the silence of the stone walls now feels like a profound, absolute barrier that only an invisible figure could cross. Chapter 3. The crime discovered. The moment of discovery is recounted in excruciating slow-motion detail, focusing on the sommelier's psychological shock. Mr. Keene, precise as always, arrives the following morning to retrieve a different bottle for lunch. We follow the meticulous sequence: the insertion of the key, the thunk of the heavy mechanism, the deliberate entry of the code, and the slow pull of the iron-bound door. He sees the space immediately, that perfectly pristine bottle with the clean blank space where its identity should reside. His grief is silent, internal and profound, described as a silent, physical collapse. Monsieur Poirot, with his characteristic composure, immediately undertakes his forensic examination, which is a segment devoted entirely to texture and scent. He does not touch the bottle directly, but observes the cold, slightly sweaty condensation clinging to the dark glass. His acute senses identify the crucial detail. The edge of the removal is perfectly clean, suggesting chemical assistance, and he identifies the faint, residual scent of a highly controlled chemical solvent, mingling subtly with the rich, deep aroma of the wine held within. A second later, his small, precise torch beam catches a single, tiny, almost invisible droplet of clear liquid clinging precariously to the neck of the bottle's wax seal, suggesting the solvent was administered with a surprising moment of carelessness or speed. As Poirot's attention is utterly fixed on these minute details, the narrator describes the contrasting reactions of the gathered suspects. Lord Ashworth's trembling now turns to tearful rage. Lady Evelyn emits only a quiet, dismissive yawn. But Miss Vance, the restorer, leans forward, her eyes wide not with fear, but with professional fascination at the clean precision of the label's removal, a telling detail that Poirot files away, suggesting she sees the act as a successful technical achievement rather than a crime. Chapter 4. Investigation begins. The investigative phase begins by addressing the central technical requirement, the specific tools needed to commit this crime of paper. Monsieur Poirot initiates a long, specialized interview with Miss Iris Vance, focusing entirely on the process of antique paper removal. She details the absolute necessity of using a specialized, non-acidic chemical solvent, a highly controlled substance not found casually, applied delicately with a fine camel hairbrush, followed by a precise, regulated heat source to lift the aged adhesive without tearing the fragile paper. Her technical knowledge is impeccable, yet her nervousness is palpable. The narrative then shifts to the verification of the 9 p.m. to 10:30 p.m. alibis, drawing out every minute detail for the listener. Lord Ashworth claims he was alone in his study, obsessively checking his financial accounts, a statement Poirot knows is likely a cover for shame, but is impossible to verify. Lady Evelyn states she was alone reading in her room, providing a vivid description of the book's velvet cover, but no witness. Mr. Keene, the sommelier, claims he was in the butler's pantry, meticulously preparing inventory lists, a partial claim with only minor, distant verification from an aged staff member. Miss Vance confirms she was in her workroom, setting up and preparing her solvent mixture for work the next day. A perfect, yet utterly convenient activity for the thief. Finally, Poirot returns to the physical evidence of the heavy cellar door. He spends a long moment kneeling, examining the stone floor, where he observes a very small, fresh scratch mark low on the doorframe. A mark consistent with the heel of a heavy shoe accidentally striking the stone when an individual was closing the door quickly and with uncharacteristic haste. Chapter 5. Clues and red herrings. The investigation is now flooded with contradictory evidence, forcing the listener to sort through the confusion. The external red herring is pulled into the forefront. Captain George Hollis, the bitter rival, is located and brought back to the manor. His sparse luggage is searched, and a small empty glass vial is discovered, smelling faintly of alcohol and cleaning fluid. A perfect circumstantial clue suggesting he might have brought his own makeshift solvent for the crime of revenge. The narrative then introduces the first piece of internal contradictory evidence found by Poirot in the cellar logbook. An entry indicates the entire wine rack holding the Valois had been rotated 180 degrees the previous afternoon by Mr. Keene to balance the humidity flow. This critical detail, which should have been reported, was deliberately omitted by the usually meticulous sommelier. Furthermore, Miss Vance, increasingly distraught, confirms that one of her specific, custom-made camel hairbrushes, the exact tool needed for solvent application, is now definitively missing from her kit. This strongly focuses suspicion on her, or someone who had access to her secluded workroom. Monsieur Poirot then slows the pace entirely, dedicating a prolonged interval to his internal monologue on the fundamental motive of the crime. He muses profoundly on the difference between destroying the wine itself, a crime of simple hatred or robbery, and destroying the label, a crime of identity, possession, or substitution. He concludes that the true motive is to claim the wine's lineage and history, not simply to ruin Lord Ashworth's treasure. Chapter 6. Complications and twists. The narrative tightens now, revealing hidden passions and the final structural impossibility of the crime. The first major revelation concerns the sommelier. It is discovered that Mr. Simon Keene is secretly Lord Ashworth's illegitimate half-brother, the unacknowledged son of a distant French vineyard owner who had a brief but passionate affair with Lord Ashworth's father. This hidden heritage gives Keene a profound, desperate motive relating to family lineage and inheritance. The Valois is not just a bottle, but a symbol of the true Ashworth history, the claim to his birthright. The alibi of the host is then shattered. Lady Evelyn, driven by her boredom and desire for attention, confesses that she was not reading, but was downstairs by the servants' entrance and distinctly saw Lord Ashworth sneaking out the back door after 10:30 p.m., contradicting his own self-serving alibi. The physical impossibility of the cellar entry then occupies Poirot's mind entirely. He returns to the heavy iron door, noting that the sensitive stone floor should have transmitted the loud mechanical sound of the lock code being entered, a sound no one heard. Poirot deduces the impossible solution. The code lock was not used to enter the cellar, but was left deliberately disengaged by someone who was inside the cellar when the sommelier locked up the room at 10:30 p.m., simply waiting for the silence of the night to complete the crime and exit without a sound. Chapter 7. The Revelation. With all the threads neatly laid out, Monsieur Poirot assembles the suspects for the final, slow-motion explanation, dedicated entirely to clarity and deduction. He begins by identifying the thief, Mr. Simon Keene, the sommelier, whose motive was the profound, driving need to claim the Valois lineage as his own heritage, the identity symbolized by the label. Keene rotated the rack to mark the valuable bottle for the defilement, a small, subtle act of ownership. Poirot then meticulously details the physical method. Keene, using his knowledge of the routine, had concealed himself in the darkest shadow of the cellar before 10:30 p.m. When Lord Ashworth left, Keene used the sommelier's privileges to secure the door, but he only engaged the quiet key lock, deliberately leaving the loud numerical code lock unlocked but hidden in shadow, thus ensuring his ability to exit silently later in the night. He then executed the crime using the professional tools of Miss Vance, her specific solvent and the missing camel hairbrush, to remove the label, intending to replace it with a forged label claiming his birthright, the Keene Valois. Finally, the seemingly complex clue of the droplet is resolved. It was not solvent at all, but pure, simple condensation from the chilled wine, which Keene had carelessly let drip onto the wax seal as he held the bottle too long, a small act of possessive, intimate handling that confirmed his profound connection to the wine. Chapter 8. Justice served. The emotional conclusion of the mystery is delivered with a sense of quiet, final solemnity. Monsieur Poirot initiates the long, measured confrontation with Keene. The sommelier, seeing his intricate plan laid bare by the sheer simplicity of Poirot's logic, collapses in silent defeat, admitting his desperate motive to reclaim his true family identity, symbolized by the vintage. The narrative then shifts to the recovery of the vital evidence. The priceless original label is recovered. Keene had treated it not as evidence, but as a treasure, placing it gently into a humidity-controlled blotter press used by Miss Vance to keep it flat and perfect. A final act of professional preservation driven by his genuine respect for the object's history. In the aftermath, Lord Ashworth, confronted with the shame of his illegitimate half-brother and his own miserly greed, shows a painful glimmer of empathy. The rival, Captain Hollis, is quietly released. The empty vial found in his room confirmed to have contained a common painkiller, dismissing the red herring. The final symbolic act of reconciliation is decided. Lord Ashworth agrees to donate the label-less Valois 1914 to a national museum, acknowledging that the wine's history must be shared, not merely hoarded, a symbolic act of acceptance for his half-brother's lineage. Chapter 9. The Restoration of Order. With the truth established, the narrative turns entirely to the pure, gentle satisfaction of order being restored, a sequence dedicated entirely to soporific description. A prolonged sensory sequence details the slow, methodical cleaning of the cellar. The sounds are soft and continuous. The gentle sweeping of the stone floor, the soft, rhythmic click of the remaining wine racks being straightened and aligned, and the profound return of the cool, constant, heavy humidity. The scene moves up to the main hall, detailing the muffled sounds of the staff restoring the furniture, the heavy curtains being drawn precisely, and the soft, steady glow of evening lamplight replacing the harsh, investigative daylight. The atmosphere is one of profound, functional peace. This leads into a long, quiet sequence detailing Poirot's final, perfectly symmetrical dinner, focusing intensely on the tactile and visual satisfaction of the polished wood, the crisp, clean linen, and the simple satisfaction of consuming a perfectly balanced meal in a space where chaos has been understood and replaced by profound, unshakable order. The rhythm of the words and the focus on texture should lull the listener into a deeper sense of security. Chapter 10. The Philosophy of the Heart. The final chapter is the gentle descent into rest. Poirot's final thoughts are shared in a soft, reflective monologue about the true, abstract value of labels and identity. He muses that the crime was ultimately driven by the label of a name, the desire for the Ashworth lineage, not the simple label on a bottle, and how human passion, whether for lineage, property, or perfection, can so easily disrupt the beautiful symmetry of life. He concludes that the greatest mystery is always the complexity of the human heart, which defies all geometry. The narrator then takes over for the final, soft wind down, a sensory description of the last flickering of the fireplace, the deep, muffling silence settling over the manor, and the heavy, comforting quiet of the night. Clara Beaumont delivers the final farewell, her voice dropping to a near whisper. My friends, the cool, dark air of the cellar has been replaced by the quiet warmth of your bedroom. The label has been found, the identity revealed, and the order is restored. The investigation is complete. Tell me in the comments where you're listening from.